dependent? What if someone didn't want to be financially independent? They want to be dependent, right? So the opposite of all of those things, let me just go through that, right? This is a fun one. This is a fun one. How many people are excited about being financially dependent? How many people is excited about becoming financially dependent? Anyone? Anyone excited about that? So you're aware of economy inflation, right? Things get more expensive. You know, you look at the price of milk, you look at the price of gas, you know, you walk into the grocery store and you come out, you can't spend less than $100 walking into the grocery store. Today, we're going to have some fun, all right? We're going to have some fun today. I'm going to share my screen. We're going to jump right into it because we do not have a lot of time. What does financial independence mean to you? So throw it in the chat. Let's get some ideas. What does financial independence mean to you? Just throw it in, you know, a couple of sentences. Throw it in. So Lloyd says, control over my own time. Awesome, right? Control over time. That's very important. Very important. Control over your time. No one is in control of your time. You know, I was scheduled to have a meeting with someone earlier today, and they told me they couldn't do it because their boss at the last minute gave them another shift, and they had to work literally 24 hours, a double shift, 12 and 12, 24 hours. And therefore, they couldn't make it to the meeting. And that person doesn't have control over their time, right? Control over inflation. Good one, Alice. Not to be impacted by inflation, right? Doesn't matter what's happening with inflation. You're not dependent on what's going on. Marbell says freedom. Yeah, to be able to do what you want, when you want, right? Blaise also said ahead of inflation. Florence says work when one pleases. You choose to work or you choose not to work. Paul says freedom to do what I want, when I want, with whom I want. Exactly, right? So you guys get the idea. Everyone has a different meaning of financial independence. Now, imagine this. Imagine someone came to you and they said, Jermaine, you know, I don't want to be financially independent. Teach me how I can be financially dependent. What if someone didn't want to be financially independent? They want to be dependent, right? So the opposite of all of those things, let me just go through that, right? So, you know, where Lloyd said control over time, financially dependent person has no control over the time. You know, Alice says control over the inflation. A financially dependent person has no control over what's going on with the inflation. You know, Marbell says freedom. You know, so the opposite of freedom is to be, you know, there's no freedom. You I don't want to say the word slavery, but you know, you lost control. There's no freedom. You're stuck. All right. You know, Florence says work when one pleases. So financially dependent, you're working whether you're pleased to do it or not, right? So let's talk about becoming financially dependent. All right. Financially dependent. Zachary says financial independence to me is a peace of mind and gratitude. All right. So the opposite of that is no peace of mind and no gratitude. So financial dependence. I'm going to teach you how to become financially dependent. All right. Financially dependent. How many of you would sign up for that class? So the first thing is to think that it is impossible. This is the first thing. Right? Think that it is impossible, right? You think it's impossible. You know, I've spoken to many people about financial independence, and each person that I've talked to, they agree that financial independence is a great thing. Everyone agrees with the fact that it's a great thing, and that's what they should strive for. Not worrying about money, traveling, right? Wherever you want, whenever you want. You know, being able to buy whatever you want without feeling guilty. These are things that people want, but only a few will ever achieve financial independence. You know why? Why do you think that is? Because they tell themselves things like this: stop dreaming. Come back down to earth. Think real. Be realistic. That's not going to happen. That's too good to be true. And all of those things boil down to one thing: them saying it's impossible. And this belief is what prevents most people from ever reaching financial independence. Because they believe, think about it for a second, and we're going to talk about this towards the end of the webinar. So I want you to stay on and pay close attention, because at the end of the webinar, we're going to dive into more details when it comes to belief, right? If they believe something is impossible, what kind of action are they going to take? They're not going to take any action, are they? Right? If you believe something's impossible, you won't take any action. So guess what? They're not going to read the books. They're not going to get any books about finances. They're not going to attend any seminars. They're not going to come to webinars like this. They won't interview people or ask people that are already financially independent any type of questions. And these are all necessary things to become financially independent, right? So this is very, very, very important. Very important. Now, the second thing is, don't have any plan. You want to be financially dependent? Don't have any plan. Don't plan anything. Just wander out, just go along every day to day. Don't think about the future. Just have zero plan. And if you say one day you'll be financially independent, you got to make sure that you have a plan. See, having a strong desire to get something is not enough. Many people have a strong desire, but that's not enough. Because you're going to need to implement strategies, right? If you're not implementing strategies, it's just a dream. It's just a dream. So if I were to ask you to unmute yourself and you tell me what is your plan for the next 5 years, would you be able to implement? Give me your plan. Give me your strategy for the next 5 years, right? Would you be able to do that? What are you going to implement? What are you going to implement exactly in the future to reach your financial independence? And if you can't answer both of these questions, as soon as this webinar is over, as soon as this webinar is finished, you sit down with yourself and you write your game plan down. You write down exactly what your plan is. And if you tell me, oh, I'm going to do it tomorrow, probably not going to do it. You're probably going to procrastinate. You know, they say the greatest nation is procrastination. The greatest nation is procrastination. So you got to make a plan, start making a plan if you haven't already, and stick to it. And if you do have a plan, stick to the plan. When was the last time you revisited your plan? When was the last time you refreshed it? You know, one of the things that I realize is sometimes we make our plan, but we don't refresh it, right? We don't refresh it and it gets stale, so we don't revisit it. And this is very important. This is very, very important. Okay, next, number 3, spend all your money immediately. Okay, if you want to be financially dependent, when you get a paycheck, spend every single cent immediately. Don't put anything away. Don't save any, just everything. As soon as you get it. You know, back home, they have a saying that says, the money burns your hand, right? Because it means the minute you get the money, it's like so hot, you got to let it go, right? You got to go spend it. You got to do something to get rid of it. So spend all your money immediately. Now, here's what I'm going to challenge you to do. Pay yourself first. Okay? Pay yourself first. Don't be like the 80% of people that don't pay themselves first. 80% of people, maybe even more, 90%, they don't pay themselves first. And this is rule number one. This is number one, right? No matter what book you've read on wealth creation or financial independence, saving money must be a priority. There's never been something written on creating wealth and wealth generation that doesn't have a component to saving money. So what do I mean when I say paying yourself first? What do I mean by that? Paying yourself first means that every time you get any income, you want to immediately put a minimum of 10%, 15% aside for yourself. That means before you pay your mortgage, before you pay your rent, before you pay any loan, before you purchase food, before you buy clothes, before you pay Bell or Rogers or TELUS, before you do any of those things, you want to pay yourself first, because the quickest way to be financially dependent is to spend all of your money immediately, right? Pay everybody else first. This is the fastest way to become financially dependent. Pay everyone else first and pay you last. You see, some people, they pay themselves first, right? And then whatever is left over, they pay their bills with. Then there's another group of people, they pay all their bills first. And if anything's left over, which is a big if, they try to put something aside. What is the problem with that? The majority of the time, there's nothing left over, so they end up not saving. They say next month, next month, next month. I'll do it next month. And then they keep what? Procrastinating, and it doesn't happen, right? It doesn't happen. What's the next one? Next one is keeping up with the Joneses. You know, you see that gentleman there has some frustration in his face. All right. He just bought a new car, and you know, he's looking at the payments, and he's thinking, oh my goodness, I don't know if I want to do this. I don't know if I want to do this. Tamoy had she was working at TD, and she had a colleague that was working with her. And this gentleman, you know, he went out and he bought a nice BMW and very nice car, upgraded it. One of the managers, like one of the high up executives, managers, directors, something like that. He bought a nice car. And then one of his colleagues saw that he bought a car, and he went out and he bought and upgraded to a new SUV, brand new, right? And she was telling me the minute he saw that car payment, it wasn't maybe 3-4 months later, Timo, if you want to type it in the chat if you can, 3 or 4 months later, immediately he returned the car. Why? Because he couldn't keep up with the payments. Have you heard of this statement before, keeping up with the Joneses? All right. Too many people, write this down. Okay, write this down if you can. Too many people spend money they don't have to buy things they don't want, to impress people they don't like. Let me repeat that again. Too many people spend money they don't have to buy things they don't want, to impress people they don't like. And this kind of behavior is what gets you into credit card debt, right? It's to keep up and impress people, right? Keeping up with the Joneses came from way back when, you know, the person's neighbor, let's say they're called the Jones, they get a car, you decide you want to get a car. You got to keep up with them, right? They get a swimming pool, you decide you want to get a swimming pool. You know, they get a deck, you decide you need to get a deck, right? And it's keeping up with the Joneses, with the neighbors, or your circle, your peer pressure, right? So you try to keep up with those around you, rather than competing with the neighbors on what you can buy. Think of yourself as competing with yourself on how much you can save. That's the magic. You don't compete with the neighbor. You compete with you. And you start to think, how much can I save? Right? How much can I save? Next. This is a fun one. This is a fun one. How many people are excited about being financially dependent? How many people is excited about becoming financially dependent? Anyone? Anyone excited about that? Right? But the funny part is a lot of people are on this path, right? A lot of people are on this path. Marbell says no, right? I didn't think anyone would be. I didn't think anyone would be. Here is the next one. Neglect your credit report. You know, I've seen some estimates where it says that some credit reports have errors on them, right? Around 70% of the credit reports they claim have errors on them. So it's bad enough, you know, to be penalized for your own mistakes, right? But we don't need to be penalized for other people's mistakes, meaning Equifax. So I personally use Equifax to monitor what's happening with my credit report, right? There's different programs, different, you know, companies that you can use for that sort of thing. I personally use Equifax, and you can even have it where they monitor it, right? So if something changes, they're going to let you know. If your credit score goes up or down, it's going to advise you and let you know what's happening. But how many times have you personally went and pulled your own credit report from Equifax or a company like Equifax? Why would you do that? Because you want to check, is there any mistakes on there? Sometimes you paid off a bill many years ago, but the company, let's say you had a phone and you closed the account with any company, right? Bell or TELUS or whoever. Let's say you close the account and they forgot to close that account, and it shows on your credit card that you still owe. That's hurting your score. But you'll never know about it unless you pull your own credit score report. So what is on your credit report that you have no idea, that you're not aware of, that's hurting your credit? You shouldn't wait till you're ready to purchase a house or purchase, you know, a car or something where they need your credit score for you to find out that the report is wrong. And now you're trying to rush to get these things off of the credit report. It'll cost you around $20 to get your credit report, your own credit report. And everyone can do it, right? You could just go to equifax.ca, pull your own credit report. It's so important. And by the way, I want to clear up a myth here. If you use a company like Equifax and you pull your own credit report, it does not penalize you and it does not reduce your credit score, right? It doesn't take any points off of your credit score to do that. If you go to, you know, a mortgage broker, or, you know, you go to those companies that do hard credit checks, yes, you're going to lose credit score if you do that. But when you do it yourself on a company like this, it's called a soft check, right? So it's not gonna affect your credit score at all. And then you can dispute any irregularities. You can call them and have them remove whatever the irregularity is from your credit report. I've had to do that in the past, by the way, right? So, you know, you may have something on your credit score, on your credit report, you have no clue. But how are you going to know if you don't check it? So I would recommend checking it, right? The fastest way to become financially dependent is to neglect it. Don't even look at it. Don't worry about it. Credit report, what's that? What's that all about, right? You don't want to go down that path. You don't want to go down that path. Next, start saving late. This is a fun one. Start saving late. Just don't start. Like you see the little boy, he started the race late, right? What is his chance of catching up to those other kids if they're going full speed and he started the race late, right? You want to become financially dependent, the easiest way is to start late. But if you want to become financially independent, you want to build your savings early, right? Start building it early. Doing that, what is it going to do? It's going to allow you to take advantage of a very powerful thing. Write this word down: compound interest. Compound interest. That's what starting early does, right? So it's not like running a race where it's linear. Now your money compounds, the interest starts to grow. So let's say you're 20 years old and you're putting in, let's say, $6,000 a year into an investment account. Every year you're putting in $6,000. That's $500 a month. You're doing that for 40 years, let's say, right? Your total investment that you put in is going to be $240,000. Okay. But because of the power of compounding, your investment is going to grow to more than $1.37 million, assuming you have a 7% rate of return. So you put in 240,000 and now your money grew to 1.3 because you used the power of compounding. And you'd be a millionaire by age 57 with $500 a month, right? But the problem is many people start late. In the early days, they don't see the value of savings. Many people focus on the now, what's happening in front of them now. And they don't focus on the future, right? They don't think about the future. But here's what they forget. Have you heard those people that said, oh, I only live for now, I'm not worried about the future? Have you heard those people say that? The problem with that philosophy, and it's a faulted philosophy, the problem with it is one day your future is going to be your now, right? Today was once your future. There was a time you were thinking about 15 years ago, 20 years ago, right? If you've been in the world more than 20 years, one day you were thinking about 20 years down the road. So how well you thought about that 20 years down the road is where you are today, right? How well you put your plan together. So it's very important that you don't buy into that philosophy of, oh, I won't worry about the future. I'll deal with it when I get there. That is not going to work. This is not a good philosophy, right? That's not going to get you towards financially independence. It'll help you to be financially dependent, but not financially independent. Is that making sense, right? Is that making sense? Next one. Give in to lifestyle inflation. Lifestyle inflation. What is lifestyle inflation? Lifestyle inflation. So you're aware of economy inflation, right? Things get more expensive. You know, you look at the price of milk, you look at the price of gas, you walk into the grocery store and you come out, you can't spend less than $100 walking into the grocery store, right? It's crazy walking in and walking out of there. So this is economy inflation. But what's lifestyle inflation? Lifestyle inflation is, this happens when you spend more money because you have more money to spend. All right. Let's say that you live in a comfortable apartment or a comfortable house and you're paying $2,500 a month for that house. It's in a great location. It's comfortable. But then, you get a raise at work. Let's say you get a significant raise, nice raise or a promotion. And what you do is you decide, okay, I'm going to move. I'm going to get a better apartment. And then better apartment costs $4,000 a month. Here's a couple of questions you got to ask yourself. Did you really need to move? Right? There are some cases where you needed to move. Maybe you did, maybe you didn't, right? But if you didn't, that's lifestyle inflation. That's lifestyle inflation. So if you want to become financially independent, you got to resist that urge to give into lifestyle inflation, right? And it is an urge. So instead of spending more, just because you can, you save and invest more. And that's how you're going to be able to reach your financial goals faster. So instead of using that extra money to inflate your lifestyle, you use the extra money to save more. You use the extra money to invest more. Make sense? Make sense? Next one. Get a credit card or two and buy what you can't afford. You know, I like what Lloyd said. Give them more credit cards. Give them more credit cards. The quickest way, listen to me, the quickest way and the easiest way to become financially dependent and get in way over your head is to use a credit card. You know, in some countries, they have the sand that is very soft and, you know, it has no foundation underneath it. And when you stand in it, it like makes you sink inside of the sand. Quicksand. It's called quicksand, right? And the problem with quicksand is if you've ever seen or experienced quicksand, when you get into it and you start moving around and you just get into it, your feet get stuck and you go down and you can't get out of it, right? In fact, you need help most of the time to get out of quicksand. Quicksand literally has killed people because it swallows you. You walk on it and you realize, oh my goodness, it's soft. And by the time you get your feet on there, you can't get your feet out, right? And as you're trying to get your feet out, you're sinking further and further and further into it until your head is below the sand and there's nothing you can do. And literally you drown in sand. Avoid that sinking feeling and a lifetime of debt. Unfortunately, we're in a society where people are in a lifetime of debt. You know, when they got the credit card, their intention wasn't to have it for life. Their intention was to have it for a short period of time, but they end up holding on to it for too long, right? So you got to avoid going into credit card debt and that lifetime of debt by doing one thing. Write this down. Using my debit card. Using my debit card or cash rather than credit card, right? The only way that you're going to spend your own money is to use your debit card and credit card. When you're using your credit card, you're spending the bank's money, right? When you're using your money, you're not paying interest. Remember what Albert Einstein said, the person that understands it, interest, compound interest, they earn it. The person that doesn't understand it, they pay it. So you got to remember, you only buy the things you can afford to pay for. So what am I saying here? If you don't have the cash in the bank or in your wallet to buy it, you can't afford it. You can't afford it. You can't use future income to purchase something now. This is the trap, right? You can't use money that you think you're going to get in the future to purchase things today. If you don't have it today, you don't purchase it today. Okay? Next one. You get sucked in by the shop now, pay later, and these unbeatable loans, right? You know, retail companies, you know, they're so serious. They've figured out that most people struggle to wait for what they want. And they utilize that. We live in a world where instant gratification is promoted as the normal thing. We live in a world where living on credit is normal. It's almost like if you don't have credit, what's wrong with you? Why don't you have credit? I don't know. I don't have any credit. Why don't you have credit? Why don't you have credit? Right? When you sign on the dotted line and you choose those buy now, pay later options, you're just delaying the inevitable. You're going to pay. All right? At some point, you're going to pay. They're going to request that money. Don't pay for a year. Get it now, but don't pay for a year. Have you seen those advertisements? And you have to pay that money back eventually, usually with a lot of interest, especially those ones that say 0 interest, right? And a lot of fees. And especially if you start missing payments, that's when it gets crazy. So the solution to become financially independent rather than dependent is to save up for what you want. I know it sounds boring. It sounds, I don't know if I can wait for that, right? It doesn't sound exciting. But saving up for what you want is always a better option in the long run, because you're going to pay the true cost of the item. You see, when you buy now, pay later, you don't pay the true cost because of the fees and the interest. And then you end up racking more and more up in debt. And guess what? The future, write this down. The future you thanks you for your self-control. The future you thanks you for your self-control, right? The future you thanks you for self-control.